Hi, hello everyone. Thank you for joining. So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. There are many of you to join us, but we're going to get started so that we can take advantage of as much of the time of our speakers today as possible. My name is Sonini Yura, and I'm acquisitions editor for the Biomedical Engineers book portfolio at Elsevier, and I will be your host. Professor Michelle Johnson, Director of the Rehabilitation Robotics Lab at the University of Pennsylvania, is the moderator and the creator of this webinar series. First, I would like to start with some housekeeping notes. Today's webinar is scheduled to run for 50 minutes, followed by a Q&A for 10 minutes. We would love to hear from you, so please use the Q&A box to ask questions to our presenters, and they will be answered in the end. A recorded version of this webinar will be available, and you will receive an email with the information after the session. You will also receive an email on how to redeem your certificate. In today's webinar, we are going to hear first from Dr. Khor Kang Xiang, speaking about how affordable rehabilitation robots speed up hand recovery for stroke in Malaysia. And then we're going to hear from Dr. Natiara Mohamad Hashim. She will speak about Malaysian perspective of robotics advancing in rehabilitation medicine, the gaps in its clinical applicability and practice. And without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters. I will stop sharing my screen, and Dr. Xiang, you can start sharing your screen.
Hi, a very good morning to everyone. Thank you, Yura. Hi, Dr. Natiara. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, is the screen, is it everything okay, Yura?
Yes, it's perfect.
Great. Right, very good mornings to all. This is Khor here. Just a quick introduction about myself. I was in the field of rehabilitation robotics for past 8 years. I started the journey a bit about a story of myself. Is 8 years ago, I was in the universities. My background is in the robotics. And the reason why I explore inside rehabilitation robot is by chance I go to a stroke centers, and then only I realized stroke rehab is a very tough process. And I just realized the technology is still a lot of space to improve. And that's why I explore into the journey how we can use the technologies to improve the process of a stroke rehab starting 8 years ago. And until now, currently I'm a co-founder of TechCare Innovation, and also advising patients on using rehabilitation robots. Right. A quick introduction about TechCare. TechCare stands for technology that cares. The idea is how we can use technology to provide care for the people in improving their physical performance. So we provide interactive and automated intelligent training solution. We not only build the solution by ourselves, we also combine with other technology from different companies to provide as a comprehensive solution for human performance. Currently, we have customers from different countries: UK, India, Malaysia, Thailand, and even in China, right? We won over past 30 awards, innovation, and we featured in some newspaper. All right, this is the topics today. I'm going to share about stroke rehab. So the stroke rehab, the key concept is basically about neuroplasticity. The concept of neuroplasticity is the higher the intensity of the training, the faster the recovery. And study shows that the more we do, the better the recovery. You can see from the A, B, and C. A is a control group whereby there is no trainings on the rehabilitation, while B is before the patient do the rehab. C is the patient after they do the rehab. And we can see a lot of activation on the brain, which shows that the training activities on the rehab actually helping to build the function of the brain after the injuries. So study shows that consistent daily of 400 to 600 repetition are very crucial for effective brain changes. The thing is, to recover hand function is not an easy process because our hand ourselves have 14 joints, and each of the joint controlled by different kinds of fine motor muscles. And this is how it looks like, the process of hand function recovery, starting from a stretching exercise. Normally, we will release the stiffness, and then we go for movement-based exercise. Then we will start with a function exercise, and then slowly by end of the stage, we will do a strengthening exercise in order for us to maintain the function for long term. Right, and this process actually can take from months to years, depending on the patient recovery rate. But the idea is, in science, hundreds of daily repetition needed for every stage of motor recovery to be effective. So if we are to have a person face-to-face to do the training for the patient, is very time-consuming and very tiring. So how can we use the technology to help us to empower the recovery of the patient? And of course, it comes the robotic technologies. And robotic technology is not a very new thing. It's been there for like past 30 years in research. And it has been a lot in the Europe, in the US, and mostly applied in the hospitals, right? So the challenging part is still, the question is how affordable can we have the robot to bring it for the patient to have a more effective trainings, right? And here are some of the clinical evidence of some of the robotic devices on to show that improvement in hand function after 20 sessions of robot assistant trainings. And while the right hand side is another study whereby a robotic based therapy shows improvement in hand motor function after chronic strokes with after 3 weeks of trainings. And research shows that actually robot can work to improve the motor recovery in combination of physiotherapy, of course. So the idea is how can we bring the robot closer to the patient? That's why here have the hand robot HR30. It's an air-powered hand exoskeleton robot for fingers and the hand trainings. This I'm going to share in details today with you on how we can use robotic technologies to train for our stroke recovery. So this is how it looks like. I'm going to share some quick videos on how it works. All right, so what you can see that HR30 hand robot. So it can actually, the different kinds of trainings is actually used for different kinds of stages of the patient. The massage therapy is basically, normally we will do a lot of stretching to release the stress. So this air massage is using air compression sequential techniques in order to release the muscle stiffness and improve the blood circulation. Then we can use the mirror therapy and the continuous passive movement, which is also called CPM, in order to have the patient to relearn the function with passive assistant trainings. And slowly, when they are able to do some movement a little bit, then we can use wear the robot as well to do some functional tasks with the activations of the mirror glove. While the last one, we can resist the movement as well in order to strengthen the muscle joints. So basically, the unit of this robot is actually we try to cover as much as possible for different stage of the patient recovery, so that we don't need to just a robot in order to only can cover for one stages, but actually can assist the patient along the journey of the recovery. And but even though patients that have been recovered, we can actually use the robot to maintain, which is very important for stroke patient, to maintain the motor functions movement. Right. And one very important thing is called thumb opposition trainings. This thumb opposition is vital and can actually help up to 40 to 50% of our hand function shows by research. And that's why this robot also can help us to do thumb opposition training. We can select based on what we want to train on each of the fingers, right? And here I'm going to share with you some of the case studies movement on a chronic patient. This is 50 plus years old on 4 years of post-stroke patient. So before that, this is a very typical stroke patient whereby they have a very high spasticity. So this patient actually have a 4 years of post-stroke, still very high stiffness. And we teach them some of the stretching exercise together with massage and wearing the hand robots. And here is how it looks like after a few kinds of trainings. And this patient can actually start to move her thumbs already. So it's very excited for us because it has been 4 years, she haven't moved her fingers. And of course, there's still a lot of space for improvement. All right. And the second case study here is the 50 plus years old as well. This is 1.5 years of post-stroke patient. Initially, the patient is not able to open much on the index finger. All right. So we teach them how to customize the training based on what is his stages on the index finger. Then after the trainings, they can slowly see the movement on opening of the hand. While this is not a magical science, this is basically referring to the physiotherapy concept whereby repetitions create recovery. And this goes back to the neuroplasticity concept, right? The higher the intensity, the better the recovery we can see. And even though we have this hand training function, actually, the unique of the robot is actually we can improve the hand. At the same time, it can assist the patient to assist the therapist to train back the function. For example, at the same time, our therapists provide arm and elbow trainings to strengthen out the whole arm in order to use the function. And then most importantly is how we can apply the function inside their daily living. So this is an example combination of the robot, not only the robot, but also active exercise as close as the task function that beneficial for them. All right. And this is a third case study, 6-month post-stroke patient, 70 plus years old, a little bit older. Well, initially when we meet him, is the finger is not able to move much. So well, we advise them to use the CPM trainings, the mirror trainings. They do a lot of trainings. And then slowly, initial stage, we will start to see some movement on the patient hand after the repetition of the trainings. And we will not stop there. We will continue to see, to train back the function slowly. So once they have the movement, slowly we can start to do some functional exercise, example of the ringing patterns, and then grasping and releasing movement. This is an example. So it's not a one-time stage. It's actually a continuous loop whereby we will start the robot trainings, active movement, and then the task function in order to strengthen the function of the patient in the daily life. Well, even though we can improve the hand function, if we did not improve the elbow, actually they are not able to have that kind of function as well. So while doing different kind of function, we will see what kind of movement they will require. Example, this is a pick and place movement. They are not able to do a pick and place. We can customize the movement of the robot by selecting the pinching movement. This is an example of the how they can do a pinching movement. So this is the idea is to let them learn, let their brain learn. This is a pinching movement, right? If we are as a human to assist for this pinching movement for 10 minutes, we are very tired already. But with robot in 1 hour, 60 minutes, in 60 minutes, we can do 1,000 of repetition, which is recommended for faster recovery in neuroplasticity. And this is the result when we apply in function. They can, after wearing the robot, we did not stop there. We will ask them to pick up the robot hand, and then we will ask them to do the function, the intended function. And slowly they can start to get the feel of the pick and place movement. Right. So because the end idea is the function is still the key, component of the patient. So for them, it's very important for them to go back to the function. And this patient actually asked whether they can train back the chopsticks function. And yes, we can, wearing the hand robot, we can customize the movement for the chopstick. Example, the tripod grabs. This is the chopsticks movement, right? After that, we can start to see some movement on the hand. And then yes, we did not stop there. After that, we will ask them to practice in the actual movement. And we can see here, actually, they start to see the improvement on the function. And from here, we can see that patients actually have a higher motivation because they can get the function faster. And then with that, they can actually have more confidence to continue the trainings, right? And of course, this is not a medical device to treat the disease, but actually a hand exercise device to help us to increase the intensity of the repetition of our trainings. All right. And here's some of the feedback of the therapies. So these therapies actually mostly we will use passive movement. Some of the feedback just now try on another patient can see the difference after passive with mirror trainings. So usually after doing many repetition of the passive movement, not really obvious of finger extension. So most of the time we will use a passive movement for patients who are not able to move their hand. So these therapies actually use lots of passive movement. It is very time consuming and it's actually very tiring as well. But if with robot concept, they have tried using the mirror training for 10 minutes. They can see the patient actually able to do finger extension for 2 repetitions. And that is just about 10 minutes. How about 60 minutes, 1 day, 6 months, etc. And that is the time we can buy back for the patient, especially during the golden periods. And well, the mirror therapy is not invented by us, by the way, and mirror training have been there in the past many years. This is 2009 research been showing that mirror therapy can help to improve the upper limb trainings for the stroke patient. And this is some of the family members' feedback. Even though if you have passed the golden period, is okay, because we have patient actually have a lot of patients after 1 year. This is a 3 years post-stroke patient. They can still see the improvement even after 1 month. This have been using it for 2 times daily. Some of finger, they can see more flexible. They can see the result faster with the support of the technologies. And we can see that with robotic technology is not far from us. It's actually just nearby us where we can actually use it even at home as well now today. So why robot trainings? This is a graph of stroke recovery process whereby without physiotherapy we can still improve a little bit, but after 6 months it's a little bit stagnant, right? And very important is with physiotherapy we can see a lot of improvement, right? But is there a way how we can improve further to achieve the full recovery and to fasten with a shorter time? And that's where it comes the robot. So with robotic technology combination with physiotherapy, we can foresee a better result with patient and supporting the therapies to gather more patient at the same time, right? It's portable, easy to set up. Less than 3 minutes, we can already see. Later, I can do a demonstration if there's some time. And right. So most importantly, what is the price, right? Because the topics today is about affordable. And considering the function, actually, the international offer price actually is just $899 per set. We are selling internationally worldwide. So in equivalent, we can use at least a year, which is about $2.5 a day to have a robotic trainings with you. So what we can see here is robotic is no longer a dream at home. It's just near before in front of us. And yes, that is my last slide. And feel free to put your question in the chat box. And I can actually have a 5 minutes demonstration here now. Is it okay, Yura?
Yes, it's okay.
Great. All right. Okay. Let me do it. Okay, right here comes this is the robot. I can hold it in my hand. It's very light. Okay. All right. Okay, now I'm going to wear the robot glove. This is how it looks like. Okay. It's powered by air, so it's very safe. And there's an air valve. We just have to plug it inside here. And it's all fully battery powered. We don't need to plug the power plugs. And now this is how I'm going to wear the robot glove. Just like a normal glove, I can wear it. Okay, one by one, the fingers. And all right. So here is how it looks like. Okay, I'm going to open and turn on. All right. Okay, let's say now I'm going to do, don't have much movement. The first thing we will do is this CPM movement. So I'm going to play now. All right. So it's pumping the air inside, and all this is air valve. So it will pump the air inside to assist the hand movement. Okay. All right. So this is the first thing we will do for most of a patient is we start a lot of patients, they will ask how they do train. By the way, we do have therapists to train them directly if they have the device. And most importantly is to start something simple first, because this is actually very customizable device. We have therapists using it, we have patients using it as well. And the first thing we will do is start something simple, allow our brain to accept simple movement. Right. The first thing is to train the 5-finger opening and closing movement. Right. Very simple. And then slowly after 1 to 2 weeks, they can start to relearn a little bit on the movement. Then only we can start to adding on different kinds of the movement on the finger. Example, I want to do a functional movement on the pinching movement. Okay. Now I'm going to pause it. All right. I'm going to adjust. So there is a light on each of the fingers. I just have to turn off the light to deactivate, and then I play. Right now I have put the finger trainings on the pinching movement. So this is how it looks like. So how therapists you can train or patient can train is we will have our advice is we can have some small items of a ball or something that for them to hold. This is an example. All right. So we can do a functional movement. At the same time, we can actually strengthen the shoulder and the elbow movement. Right. And I can try to change to the opposition, thumb opposition. This is a thumb opposition trainings. I can adjust based on, because different kind of patient may have different kinds of levels of hand function. So this is a very customizable hand function training tools robot for therapies as well as the patient at home. All right. Okay. And we can actually adjust the time. So now this is the 2 seconds of opening and 2 seconds of closing. So now let's say example for patient, let's say if you're a therapist, you wanted to help your patient, we will adjust. If the patient with a little bit high stiffness, we will increase the time of the opening more than 5 seconds. It can go up to 9 seconds. So with this, it actually can help us to stretch the hand of the patient with assistance of the robotic trainings. All right. So this is, you can see is in the stretching position. Okay. So it can help kind of like assist the therapist to stretch the hand of the patient. With stretching more, mobilize flexibility, increase. The higher the flexibility, the more function training we can do for the patient. Right. Okay. So this is on the robot glove. All right. So Yura, how many time do I have?
You can go ahead, please go ahead.
All right. I think almost there. Just the last one is about this mirror glove. All right. Okay. Mirror glove. How we can use the mirror glove is the this is the okay. This is the mirror glove. Okay, we wear on it. Okay. And all right, I can wear on. Okay, so let's say if I'm wearing the glove, so there's a sensor here. Okay. This is the glove. So I turn on the mirror function, and then basically it's used to help to trigger the movement of this robot glove. So you can see when I press, it will close. All right, open and close. Okay, and close. So this is normally we will use for patients who have the they do not understand on the movement. Because some patients they lost half of the body, they do not understand the movement. So we will use this the healthy hand to trigger the movement of the movement. So this is what we call the mirror trainings. Also to relearn the to use the healthy side to relearn the function for the weak side. And not only in the relearn of the movement, but also we can use as a trigger for assistant. Let's say example, if you wanted to grab something with the assistant, we can do grasping and release. So this is a kind of, let's say if we want to do a functional movement, we can use a sensor-based trainings for the patient to do the trainings with the assistance of the therapies. So this is how it looks like on the robot glove. And yeah. Okay. And the last one is actually the massage glove, right? So this massage glove basically helps a lot of patients with spasticities. A lot of time patients, they have high spasticity, they are not sure what to do and they just leave it there. And so what we advise them to do is first, of course, they need to do stretching exercise combination with some hand splint, as well as slowly they're able to open. We ask them to put inside this robot massage glove. So this is how it looks like. All right, I will need to put inside my hand inside and then I play. All right. And you can see here the air slowly pump from the front to the back. Okay. All right. So a lot of time when doing stretching exercise is very time consuming for the therapists, as well as the patient themselves. It's very tiring. So let's say if we have the robotic trainings to put their hand inside, we will use the air power to assist them to do a stretching movement. So you can see here is a stretching in the extension position using the air power. And this is using a sequential training for patients who did not move their hand, especially for stroke patients. They will have a hand edema, a lot of fluid inside the hand, and causing them not able to move their hand effectively. So what we do is we put it inside, and then it can help using the sequential training to push the fluid back to the bodies with these sequential compression techniques. All right, and yep. So this is the last one, and that's all from my side. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Xiang. Dr. Natiara, you can start your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Khor, and thank you, Yura. So without further ado, I would like to share my slide. So, Yura, can you see my slide?
Yes, yes, it's perfect.
Okay. So without further ado, I just like to thanks to the organizer for inviting me to speak for today's webinar. Just a short introductions. I'm Dr. Natiara Mohamad Hashim. I'm a rehabilitation physician and clinical lecturer, and also the co-founder of My Rehab Maker in the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine at University Technology Mara. So I would like to speak about a topic of Malaysian perspective in robotic advances in rehabilitation medicine, the dilemmas in its clinical applicability and practice. So, oops. So this is outline of my presentation for today. First of all, I would like to give an overview of rehabilitation medicine service in Malaysia. Then I will talk a bit about robotics advances in rehabilitation medicine in Malaysia. And then we're going to describe a bit about the dilemmas of robotics technology in the clinical applications. And of course, we're going to discuss regarding the strategies in upgrading and implementing robotics technology into clinical practice. So just a little bit history of rehabilitation medicine development in Malaysia. Our rehabilitation medicine can be traced back way back in 1913 when there's a Sungai Buloh Leprosy Settlement Center when it's a research and treatment center for treating leprosy. At the point of time, rehabilitation is much focused on prescribing orthosis and prosthesis for the disabled patients as a secondary outcome of leprosy. And this Sungai Buloh Leprosy Settlement has been nominated to be listed one of the UNESCO Heritage Listing, and at this current time, we still have this the settlement, which and most of the survivors of the leprosy is much participating in the horticulture activities. And of course, this settlement has evolved, greatly involved, and has developed into the National Infectious Center in Malaysia from the leprosy center. So a little bit of rehabilitation medicine. So rehabilitation medicine is pioneered by Professor Dr. Zaliha Umar, and she is the first to establish the state-of-the-art of rehabilitation medicine practice in Malaysia. She was the first to set up the residency program in University Malaya Medical Center, and up to the current and currently, UMMC actually has produced about more than 100 rehabilitation physicians to provide the rehabilitation service throughout the country. And of course, there's still a need of rehabilitation physicians in Malaysia. Hence, University Technology Mara has opened its doors to the second residency program in Malaysia to produce more of rehabilitation physicians to fulfill the needs of rehabilitation service. So just a little bit about rehabilitation medicine in Malaysia. This is a paper that written by my senior colleagues, and rehabilitation medical service in Malaysia is spanning nearly to the whole spectrum of level of care, from level 1 to level 4. And of course, all these rehabilitation services is funded by the Ministry of Health through its tertiary, primary and secondary healthcare center. The teaching hospital is funded by Ministry of Education, and of course we have private funded standalone rehabilitation hospital as well. We also have the involvement of the non-governmental organizations such as SOCSO to set up state-of-the-art advanced technology rehabilitation service also in Malaysia. And at the community level, we have active participation from Ministry of Welfare, NGOs, and even private funding to provide vocational and community-based rehab in Malaysia. So this map actually to depict the locations of the level 4 care rehabilitation service throughout Malaysia, throughout the country. As you know, Malaysia consists of West and East Malaysia, and it lies in the vicinity beside Singapore, if you don't know. So basically, if you can see, the locations of level 4 rehabilitation hospital is much more concentrated on the West Peninsula of Malaysia compared to our Borneo counterpart. So most of this level 4 rehabilitation services is provided by Ministry of Health, University Hospital, SOCSO, and of course the private funded standalone rehabilitation hospitals. So rehabilitation medicine has progressed so much in Malaysia, and actually so we have established actually the public funded standalone rehabilitation hospital back in 2012 that is funded by Ministry of Health. Then subsequently a more advanced center that is funded by the PERCESO, or we call it Social Security Service, that set up the state-of-the-art advanced technology rehabilitation center that is the biggest in Southeast Asia, and actually it is one of the best. So then of course there is a need actually for rehabilitation medicine services in Malaysia, that there is a market of in the private sector. Hence, there's two new recently private standalone rehabilitation hospital that currently providing the service to the self-funded patients, or even or the patients that is medical insured. This actually to depict that Malaysian rehabilitation medicine in Malaysia has improved a lot and was progressively enhancing its service throughout the country. So again, this is the topic of interest for today. So where are we in the robotics application in Malaysia? Is there robotics? Do we implement robotics in our clinical practice? And of course, yes, we are not foreign to our robotics. And actually, just to depict in Kuala Lumpur, even in Kuala Lumpur, there's a 3 center that actually embark into implementing robotics rehabilitations into their clinical service. And as you can see, even in our public funded rehabilitation hospital, they are equipped with exoskeletal locomote gait training, with an upper limb exoskeleton as well. And even in University Malaya, a teaching hospital, they also equipped with some exoskeletal upper limb robotics, even with bionic leg, exoskeleton bionic leg. And we can see there's also an effective gait training by Reha. And of course, if you can see in Prince Court Medical Center is a private hospital that also provides some rehabilitation service. Also, they own their own locomote exoskeleton gait trainer. And of course, in Putrajaya, in the private standalone rehabilitation hospital, we also equip with these robotic advances, especially in gait training, and of course, the upper limb robotic training as well. So even in Selangor, in the Selangor state, we have 3 centers that actually equipped with robotics. That include the teaching hospital, and again our private rehabilitation hospital region, which they have 2 of these advances. And even Sunway Medical Center is a private hospital that provide the rehabilitation service. They also have some gait train, the treadmill exoskeletal gait trainer of locomote. And of course, in Kelantan, far east of Malaysia, we also equip with robotics, with collaborations of SOCSO, or we call it PERCESO here, with the Cyberdyne products of robotics advances. And of course, SOCSO Rehabilitation Center is one of the most advanced adopting technology in their clinical service. They have various span of type of robotics at their center, because they have so many reserve in terms of monetary. So hence they can afford to buy all these robotics. So how about is there any rehabilitation robotics R&D in Malaysia? To answer that, of course, yes, you already listened to Dr. Khor, and actually it's not only limited to that, and the list is not exhaustive, and actually Malaysian is not foreign to R&D project and or activities. This is part of a few of the research activity that has been published in high index journal. So our R&D activities span from humanoid robotics, upper limb robotics, and even exoskeleton upper robotics, and even spanning into orthotics robotics as well. So of course, I think Dr. Khor has an outstanding achievement in penetrating the market with the innovative products. I think this is a game changer on how we want to implement robotics in our clinical practice, because as you can see, we are very much reliant to our imported product, and actually none of the rehabilitation, the level 4 rehabilitation center really adopting this local technology that should be implemented in our clinical practice, because at the end of the day, we know that robotics is very expensive, is very costly, and we should agree that the only way to reduce the cost is by having a local product. So, because we know that robotic is not alien to Malaysia, it's not really foreign, we already adopting robotics into our clinical practice, we already produce our local innovative product. So the main big question to be answered is robotic is the alternative towards conventional therapy in Malaysia? Is robotics serve what they are meant to serve? Means that do they really reduce the frequency and the intensity of is it they really increase the frequency and intensity of therapy in Malaysia? Is it they really improve the quality of service? I think it's yet to be answered. It's a matter of discussion and debates. It depends on the perspective at which ground that you stand for. So before we further discuss, I would like to share a little bit figure and data. So in Malaysia, our healthcare system is heavily funded by the government through taxations, and of course we also have our private healthcare service that provide more individualized treatment options that based on to patients who can afford through their medical insurance or out-of-pocket payments. However, because of the rising economic inflation, healthcare system has become commodity, and this leads to the high catastrophic effects towards patients. And as you know, 65% of 32 million populations in Malaysia actually very reliant towards public healthcare sector. However, only 45% of the healthcare professionals serve in the public sector. So how this actually can affect in the implementation of robotic in our clinical service? Of course, when we talk about heavily subsidized healthcare system, there's always a priority for which the money should go. Of course, to be in the government, of course, we're going to more prioritizing the monetary towards acute and preventive medicine and little to rehabilitation medicine. So this indirectly actually affect on how we want to implement advanced technology or advanced intervention into our clinical practice. And this actually just a little bit of data regarding our people with disability in Malaysia. As you can see, stroke alone is actually the leading cause of this disability adjusted life years. So our records by the social welfare that we already recorded about 450,000 person people with disability that is registered under the Department of Social Welfare in 2017 alone. And I'm sure this number is much higher now, and 35.2% of this number is consists of the patients with physical impairment. So before we answer these questions of frequency and intensity, I think with all this data and figures, we can see that we are still struggling in providing access, the basic intervention, the basic rehabilitation services to our populations. Of course, this actually access to the healthcare is influenced by many factors, and this is indirectly can affect how robotics technology to be implemented widely in our country. Of course, so this notion is actually supported by published papers by our senior colleagues that actually supporting the notion that not all tertiary hospitals have complete and comprehensive rehabilitation service team headed by rehabilitation medicine physician. We still lacking of rehabilitation physician actually to fulfill the needs of 3 million disabled population in Malaysia. So still means that this paper depict that we are still struggling to provide the basic needs towards our disabled patients in Malaysia. So hence it becomes indirectly, it becomes the barrier on how we want to advance in our interventions. So of course, so now actually this leads to the question, is there any room for robotics to be implemented in clinical service in Malaysia? And of course there is, and I think it's important to identify what problem, what's the limitation and what obstacles that actually being what obstacles that actually contribute to the limitations for robotics to be implemented in our clinical service. Of course, it always starts with acceptability. The clinician the clinician perceivedness and receptiveness towards technology is somehow, I would say, is very because robots is very expensive. Of course, they become very reserved about having this technology into the clinical practice, because of course buying robotics is not only having the robots into the clinical practice, but also and how a mechanism to be to support to provide the technical support towards the service. And of course, we have the issue of healthcare professional skills in handling the technology, and of course, this also provide the barriers on how we want to implement this robotics widely in our country. And cost is always the issue, and we have to agree that one of the intervention to cut out the cost is to have the local innovated product to produce locally in Malaysia. However, I would say that there is a lack of good, well-designed case control studies of local innovated products to be able for the products to be for the local products to be implemented in our clinical practice. So of course, we have to increase the awareness, we have to increase the perceive of the clinician towards the technology. Hence, I think there's a lack of clinician participation in the initial R&D process. I think what we should have is we should to entice this clinician and how the potential of our local engineers, our local innovators in providing technology to solve the real field problems. And when we talk about approachability, of course, we don't have enough specialized rehabilitation center to support the needs of Malaysian population. I think that is a fundamental problem, because if you want to have robots, you have to have center first. If you want to have robots, you have to have these highly professional skills to handle the technology. So that is the fundamental question that have to be solved. And of course, we also lack the basic of the manpower and facilities and logistic problem in order to carry out the basic rehabilitation service. And of course, we also struggle with space. When we talk about Locomart or even Reha, the gate trainers, exoskeleton gate trainer, we need a much of space to place the robots. And of course, when we talk about robots, it's always about the cost, it's expensive. So we have to agree that not all patients in overly burdened hospital can benefit for this technology. So we have to have a proper patient selection. We have to identify who, what, and which patient that could benefit from these robotic technologies. Because at the end of the day, what we want a cost-effective and time-effective intervention to be implemented in our clinical service. And of course, we also struggle about the availability. For now, I know there's a various end product imported technology that we can buy, that we can import from the other countries. But the question is again about the viable and sustainable mechanism in order for this technology to be sustainable in the clinical practice. And the only way actually to solve this problem is to have a local innovative products that I think it can solve many areas, many perspectives of this robot technology. So I think the most important question to answer is actually appropriateness and affordability. This is actually a systemic review that actually emphasizes on the importance of economic evaluations when we want to implement some technology towards our towards our healthcare system. MATAS is actually an governing bodies, is a Malaysian Health Technology Assessment section who strictly governs all the technology to be implemented in our healthcare. They actually has emphasized their role is actually to ensure that the technologies for healthcare would be safe, effective, and cost effective. And they have also have emphasized that the inclusion of health economic evidence in policy making has improved the efficiency of the healthcare spending as it applies to the concept of value for the money. Means that there is the there is a importance to emphasize of economic evaluation whenever we want to implement the new technology in the country, because we want whatever we spend into the intervention is actually cost effective and time effective. And at the end of the day, we want whatever our intervention is value for money. And remember that our Malaysian healthcare system is very heavily subsidized. However, the systematic review has found out that Malaysia still have lack of cost effectiveness study to support in the decision making and policy making in terms of implementing advanced technology into our clinical practice. So actually this, I just want to depict that even a conventional rehabilitation medicine, we don't have this health economic evaluation to show the impact of conventional rehabilitation medicine in the country, let alone to have robotics in the picture as well. Because I think the evaluation of economy is very important to support in the spending of the technology into our clinical practice. So I think this is a very big gap that has to be fulfilled because we have to answer the cost effectiveness and time effectiveness in whatever intervention that we want to introduce. So of course, when we talk about economic evaluation, we cannot run away to actually choose whoever will benefit from this robotic training, because you know, if robots is very expensive, again it's very expensive. If you want to place it in a healthcare system, we have to understand that not all patients will have the accessibility towards this robots. Hence, we have to have a proper patient selection and how we want to do it. And then, of course, we now talking about data analytics. We have to know what actually what factors that actually contribute to help us in the decision making. At the end of the day, this also can help us to answer the cost and time effectiveness of our interventions. So of course, that is the limitations of how we want to implement the robotics. And of course, when we talk about limitation, is always we always have to talk about strategies in order to overcome these limitations. And of course, we talk about the accessibility. Even the accessibility towards basic rehab is very it's limited in Malaysia. So however, I do think technology can bridge this accessibility, and thanks to COVID-19, actually we are more opened up. Malaysia is more opened up to be receptive towards new technology, and we always talk about this telemedicine and telerehabilitation. And I think technology or even robotics technology can fill up the gaps in to fulfill the accessibility towards rehabilitation needs. And again, affordable robotics technology is very important. Of course, the way to do it actually to enhance the local R&D projects by the international collaboration in knowledge transfer, and of course to have a trans and multidisciplinary involvement in the initial process of R&D. As I said before, the clinician might not have shared the same idea in terms of acceptance towards this technology, because they don't see the potential of the local innovated product, because we are very skeptic about, maybe we are very skeptic towards our local products, that we only see that the imported product is better than ours. But I think it's yet to change, and I think Dr. Khor actually has implied that actually already proved that our local innovated product is as good as the imported ones. So I think to entice this interest among the clinician, they should be involved in the initial R&D process, and it should not be they should not be work in isolation. And if you talk around with clinicians, actually they always have a lot of ideas, but actually they don't know to whom they should turn to share the idea, or even to convey the field problem that they have, that technology might be the answer to solve this problem. And of course, empirical data is very important. As I said before, we need a well-designed clinical trial to prove the effectiveness of our study. That's number one, because that also is the requirement of the MATAS, because they look into that effectiveness study as well. And of course, we also need an empirical data on health economic evaluation in order to support the funding towards these products. And of course, we also need to have an open dialogue between the stakeholders and decision makers, to actually to form a framework, to form a guideline, and how we want to actually implement this robotics into the clinical practice. And I think the other thing that is very important is to have a biomedical engineering center that should be based in the hospital setting, that should not be only in isolation in other part of that is beyond hospital setting, because at the end of the day, what we want to solve is actually the field problem. So I think the center should be in the field where the problem arises. So the effective problem solving can be take place. And of course, again, funding is not always from the government. Funding is not always from our pocket money. It should be we should have an CSR project actually to increase this partnership between the industry, the academics, and even the government in order to enhance this activity of R&D, number one. And number two, at the end of the day, we have to have this local innovative product that can be implemented in our local clinical setting. This actually to share that when we want in Malaysia, we are very strict in terms of our technology. However, because of pandemic COVID-19, I think it's a blessing in disguise. We are more open up and be receptive towards technologies. And actually, they just published this compendium in 2021 in evaluating all the technology that came in Malaysia during the pandemic 19. And I just want to emphasize that actually they are evaluating into these two part of umbrellas, that they are looking into the technology evidence assessment, and of course they are looking also in the health technology and engineering management as well. So what I want to emphasize that if we want to have a local innovative product to be implemented in our clinical practice, it should fulfill the criteria of safety, it should be fulfill the criteria of economy, it should be affordable. And of course, they must have a local access to sales support, technical support, and we have to have the access to the spare parts, and local production is a plus point. So actually, I just want to depict that at the end of the day, what we want is affordable, feasible technology advancement to be implemented in our local practice, because I think a viable process should be in place in order to have it up and running. So as a conclusion, there's a need of comprehensive structural holistic guideline or workflow in integrating robotics into Malaysia Rehabilitation Service. There's a many room for improvement in the provision of robotics clinical application R&D, and Malaysia has the potential to become the hub of R&D activities if more collective and collaboration of the policymakers, stakeholders, innovators, researchers, clinicians, and the end user to sit together and actually to come up with a resilient workflow and guideline how we want to implement this technology. With that, I end my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Hashim. It was really nice. I really love all the presentation. Now I ask our panelists to join me in camera. Thank you, Dr. Xiang, for the demonstration. We love it. We have a question for you, an easy one. How much did you say the robot cost again?
Hi, the robot cost is $899 US, not including the shipping cost. For more information, you can check out our Facebook. We have our customer service to advise whether it's suitable for your condition. and all the information will be there, right? I will drop the Facebook link inside the chat box.
Okay. Another question is about our practice work with children. Are the hand training robots available for little ones?
Yes, there is different sizes of the hand glove, SML. Actually, there is a smaller sizes as well, SS and a smaller size. So depending on what kind of size you want, you can check whether it's suitable for the different kind of patient. So this one you can check with us as well in the link. I will share in the link inside. All right.
That's great. Thank you. Another question is, can this robot training be integrated with virtual reality? Would it make a difference?
Integrating this robot cannot integrate with virtual realities at the moment. Yeah. So potentially in the future, I mean, yeah, actually you can combine with Kinect sensor in order to detect the movement of the hand while doing the functional task, but it's not technically integrated. Yeah.
And Dr. Hashim, that's one is for you. Do you think that low-cost robot can make a difference? Is there a bias against local products?
I think, okay, I think yes, there always a bias in terms of local innovative product. I will not lie about that, but I think these have to be changed. They have to be changed because we are used to imported technology from the other countries. But I think, but before we want to change the perception, we have to have an MVP, minimal viable product, to be in the clinical practice to show that actually we are capable of producing of our own. That what Dr. Khor actually has achieved. But I think the most important thing is actually to get the clinician on board, to be together in the R&D to produce an affordable robotics as well. I think that is what is lack in Malaysia. That's like in Malaysia. I think there is no discussions among the clinician, the innovators, even the researchers, you know, to sit together and to produce something. Because sometimes we thought we are solving a problem, but actually we are solving a wrong problem, or maybe we got a wrong solution for wrong problems. That's another thing that we have to take into account. And that's number one. Number two, I think it's very important to entice this clinician into adopting technology. They have to move away from having this bias of having the imported products. You know what makes the difference is because I think we lack of good, well-designed clinical trial of local innovative product. That is another gap that I think should be stressed out, because I think because we practice evidence-based. We cannot run away from evidence-based. When we talk about evidence-based, is always look into the evidence. When we talk about evidence, is always a well-designed case control study. I think when we can provide that, then I think they are more open up to adopt this local innovative product into our clinical practice. But I really agree that you know, the way forward is actually to have our local affordable innovation product to be in place, to be implemented in our clinical practice. Because you know, in Malaysia, you know, to have that local product to be used on patient, we need the certification. The certification alone is actually cost a lot. It costs a lot. Sometimes it might cost more than to produce that robotics. I think that's also that I didn't mention in my presentation. That also is the obstacles and limitations, and why some clinical trial was not is not carried out just because of this. The certification is not there to support in the ethics applications. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, of course. I think we have time for 2 more questions. Do you think that decentralized rehabilitation to home would be feasible through more affordable and connected tools? Perhaps the training can be conducted off-site? For both of you.
For me, I think okay. I think it's a very great idea. It should be the way forward, because you know Malaysia is still struggling to have access towards a basic rehabilitation medicine, and I think technology is one of the way of solving this problem. That's number one. Number two, I think we are too focused on producing sophisticated or complex robots, but the reality is some patients don't even have rehabilitation. They don't receive the basic rehabilitation intervention. Hence, if we can produce just a basic robot just to carry out their therapy at home, I think that will be brilliant and excellent way of doing it. And of course, it can be affordable as well because it's not complex, it's not sophisticated, and it can be done. Then I pass to Dr. Khor.
I totally agree with Dr. Natiara. Thank you very much. And then technology is, I mean, because of the MCO, because of the COVID-19, we have tried a lot of telemedicine, tele-rehabilitation training as well. Even now, we continue implementing for the patient remotely all around Malaysia. So, and patient actually start to see the benefit as well. While technology not necessarily have to be complicated. As an engineer, last time we thought technology have to be very fancy, etc. But when, in fact, my father is a stroke patient, I understand the pain and the urgentness of getting the technology to be used in actual practically. So what Dr. Natiara mentioned about practicality of technology is very important. So it's very important for us to make the technology to be very practical in actual application. I like the idea of Dr. Natiara. Yeah, that is totally agree with you.
And the last one is a follow-up question about the virtual reality. What if the robotics is used to provide rapid feedback with a VR headset and serious gaming for rehab? Could that work?
Dr. Natiara, do you want to answer?
You can answer first.
Okay.
Reality, is it? Yeah.
I think there's some. I think Professor Professor Faza is actually working on the VR technologies. Based on my understanding, their current results show that it actually can help to improve using VR assisted technologies. In details, I'm not sure, but it sees that the patient actually can start to see improvement in terms of I forgot already. Maybe Dr. Natiara, you want to add on?
Yeah, I think virtual reality has, I mean, it's a technology that's available is easily available in worldwide, and actually he has been shown to actually to have an effective effect towards patients. Rehabilitation process. What it provides is provide the enriched environment. You know, when we talk about rehabilitation, it's always about the sensory motor loop. So actually VR actually give this sensory, and even combined with robots, it can give the motor feedback. And I think that is a great avenue to actually combine this motor and VR together in order to provide this enriched environment later to enhance the neuro recovery process. Yeah, VR also, we got a lot of VR. Actually, what we are doing also Dr. Khor, is part of VR. VR, we talk about immersive and non-immersive. And with the headgear, actually, it's an immersive VR. And what they do actually, feedback is also a kind of VR. I think, you know, VR also has many perspectives that you want to look into. So yeah, I think, but it's a great avenue to actually explore and should be combined with any robots. Actually, they are. I think they're starting to combine it already, because what we call it the biofeedback. You know, the 4 principles of rehabilitation: intensity, frequency, feedback, and task specific. And then the biofeedback is very important, which the VR can that can help you to produce, to provide the VR to the.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. That is very good. Biofeedback actually very important for patient. So we actually tested on virtual reality, non-immersive virtual reality, the CR2 robots. A patient, when we ask the patient to move by themselves, they are not able to move. But when we put them inside game settings, they will move. They feel like, okay, I'm moving this. Actually, they can move, but they do not know how to move. The virtual reality actually is a good feedback for them that, hey, oh, I can actually move. It's actually teaching their brain to learn about giving the feedback. This is this movement. So I think virtual reality is very good feedback for the patient, especially they're losing their part of the brain in the function. So that biofeedback can, and we can actually create different kind of environment for the patient. We cannot bring them to different environment, but we can simulate different environment in VR. Let's say in the shopping mall with a lot of people. The studies done by Professor Faza, I think they simulate a lot of people, and then they can teach their attention, etc., while walking, example. So the simulation of the environment also very useful for the patient, I think.
So thank you very much to all for participating in this last webinar of the year. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Dr. Hashim. Thank you very much, Dr. Xiang. It was a really lovely presentation. Thank you all, and I hope to see you next year in our new webinar series. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.